There's a reason this race is a dead heat. These are two unlikable candidates, period.
We know what we're walking into. President Trump made a commitment to the American people that he would debate Joe Biden anytime, anywhere, any place.
Donald Trump is going to sweep the floor with Joe Biden. He don't even know where he's at half of the time.
Here's the thing with Trump. Give him a lot of room, and he will hang himself with it.
He's refusing to say he'll accept the results of this election if he loses.
Joe Biden only has to basically stand there and dispel the rumor that he's a kind of walking zombie to actually get a bit of a win.
Biden's brain is basically turning into the soft serve that he loves so much.
I don't want to normalize this guy. He is a threat to democracy.
There was no wars under Donald Trump. Why? Because he's a real man. You need to show that America is strong and America is going to deal with you if you step out of line.
Who's going to win? The presidential debate between President Biden and former President Trump is one of the most anticipated in television history. And in a knife-edge election like this, it could also be the most consequential. It's 45 versus 46. Biden v. Trump, the rematch. Last time they faced off, in fact, last time they took part in any debate was with each other back in 2020.
I'm not here to call out his lies. Everybody knows he's a liar.
You were getting a lot of money from Russia. They were paying you a lot of money, and they probably still are.
A lot of people died, and a lot more are going to die unless he gets a lot smarter, a lot quicker.
Mr. President?
So you said you went to Delaware State, but you forgot the name of your college. You were a senator. And
You're
by
the
way,
worst
you were
president America has ever had.
Hey,
Come
Joe,
on.
I just gave $28 billion to our farmers.
Taxpayers' money.
It's what?
Taxpayers' money.
I ran because of you. I ran because of Barack Obama, because you did a poor job. If I thought you did a good job, I would have never run.
So that was last time. This time, President Biden's debating as the deeply unpopular incumbent, and it's Trump promising to restore more normality. But can he stay on message? Can Biden stay awake? Is the format with no audience, muted mics between questions, and 2 commercial breaks rigged against Trump? Have Republicans set the bar too low by predicting the ailing president? Biden will barely be able to stay on his feet. Well, this Friday we'll host an Uncensored special with some heavyweight guests to debate all the fallout. But there's already plenty to discuss with our pack. And joining me now from the Officer Tatum YouTube channel, Brandon Tatum, former Congressman Joe Walsh, host of the Bitchuation Room podcast, Francesca Fiorentini, and Karoline Leavitt, who's the spokeswoman and press secretary for Donald Trump. Well, welcome to all of you. A stellar cast to debate all this. Let me start with you, Francesca. I don't know about you, but I don't think I've looked forward to a debate on television as much as I do this one in my entire life.
Oh boy, Piers, yeah. Well, I feel like you're a little alone on this. I personally am not looking forward to 2 melty brain geezers argue who was tougher on the border, Biden or Trump, considering Biden's continued a lot of Trump's policies on that. But here's what I think. I think actually, surprisingly, I think Trump's gonna win this. Like, I truly think he can win this debate. All he has to do is not talk about abortion rights, labor rights, healthcare and how he promised to replace Obamacare with something better but never did, climate change and how he promised oil executives that he would kill the electric vehicle if they gave him $1 billion. Any plans for the next 4 years, like how he wants to replace all federal employees with loyalists, his indictments, his convictions, his payouts, the 2020 election, COVID-19, shark attacks, or how he low-key wants to sleep with his own daughter. If he can avoid that, he's going to win.
Right. Well, that gets things off nicely. Joe Walsh, here's my problem with what Francesca just said. There's a lot of people on the Democrat side that feel like that about Trump and hurl all kinds of abuse at him and say all sorts of horrible stuff about him. And the more they do it, accompanied by the more legal actions are taken against him, the more popular Trump seems to get. I think it's a really flawed strategy and says to me, Democrats have still not worked out how to handle Trump.
Piers, I agree with you in that I think a lot of people are looking forward to this debate. I disagree with you, though, on what you just said about, painting Trump as the threat to democracy that he is. I think Biden has to say that. I think Biden has to say that. I don't want him to yell and scream for an hour and a half, but I want Joe Biden to point at Donald Trump and say, this is a guy who refused to accept the results of the last election. He never conceded. He tried to overthrow an election. And as he stands before us today, America, he's refusing to say he'll accept the results of this election if he loses. Biden cannot normalize Trump.
What if Trump just turns around? Hang on, yeah, but hang on. What if Trump just turns to him and says, really, you think I'm a threat to democracy? What about a political opponent, you, who spent the entire year getting left-leaning people in the legal world to throw criminal charges at me, even convict me on one of shuffling paperwork involving a one-night stand with a porn star 20 years ago, in what most people, including many independents, see was a ridiculous overreach and a weaponization of the justice system, which has only led to one thing, again, more popularity for Trump, hundreds of millions of dollars now pouring in from people who just feel like this was a disgusting way to treat a former president of the United States, the only one to be dragged through criminal courts, and then adding, and by the way, what about the attempts to get me off the ballot? If that isn't an assault on democracy, what is? So, yeah, you've got a point. I was very critical of Trump over refusing to accept the result of the last election, very critical of his involvement in January 6th, but the Democrats haven't got a leg to stand on when it comes to preserving democracy. They've been fire burning it all year.
Oh, that's if you believe in some cabal and some deep state, Pierce, that all these Democrats are working together, and they
Yes.
unloaded on Trump
I do.
four separate indictments,
Yeah.
Pierce.
I literally think that's what's been going on. Yeah, I do. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, and I'm not a conservative. I'm just down the middle journalist, but I see things for what they are. There has been a collaborative weaponization of the justice system, which has blown right back in the Democrat faces.
Yeah. And if you're Joe Biden, Pierce, and I don't know if he's capable of doing that, I'd turn to Donald Trump and say, you are the world's biggest crybaby. What a poor little victim you are. No accountability for anything you've done. No accountability for trying to overthrow that election. No accountability, Donald Trump. You were the one that picked up that phone and called the Georgia Secretary of State and said, find me 11,280 votes. Donald Trump, no accountability at all. Pierce, there are people in America who believe in a deep state, that all of these separate indictments are the Democratic Party going after Trump. But most Americans don't think that. So I think Biden would be on really strong footing if he threw it right back at Trump.
Listen, don't get me wrong. I would love to see this all kick off because I think it's going to be fascinating. Let me bring in Brandon Tatum. I mean, Brandon, it seems to me that the mood music is this. Joe Biden only has to basically stand there for 90 minutes, not fall over, be vaguely coherent, and dispel the rumor that he's a kind of walking zombie to actually get a bit of a win, especially if he can rattle Trump's cage. In other words, the bar of expectation for Biden is so low, given all the times he's been seen falling over and talking gobbledygook and so on, that actually even a sort of basic bog standard performance could be enough to really help him. What do you think of that?
Well, I don't think the American people are that ignorant. You know, you may have two guests on here that's delusional about what's going on in America and about Joe Biden, but the American people are watching what's happening in this country with their finances, with the border, you name it. It's terrible. I don't care what anybody say. You can lie and make up a phony story about him wanting to sleep with his daughter or try to say he's a threat to democracy when the man has been the president already. It's not like we're guessing and hoping and praying that somehow this guy's going to come out of the woodworks and be the president of the United States. He already was. He didn't overthrow the country. He didn't do all the crazy stuff that they claim that he's going to do. The man did what's right for America. That's why he's so popular. That's why you can still indict him 400,000 times. And the American people can see that it's all bull crap because we see that Joe Biden has had classified documents at his house. Where's that? His son is smoking crack with prostitutes, ended up getting indicted and charged for gun charges, and he's evading taxes. You can go down the list. Hillary Clinton should be in prison right now for the things that she's done. The Democrats can do one thing. If Donald Trump does something, it's the end of the world. Let me just say this real quick. If Donald Trump wanted to overthrow an election by using his minions, there were hundreds of thousands of people that showed up at the Capitol that day. There was 84 plus million people that voted for Trump. If he really wanted to orchestrate something, he could have. There would have been hundreds of thousands of people at the Capitol building, but there wasn't. I mean, come on, we need to use common sense in this. Donald Trump is going to sweep the floor with Joe Biden. He don't even know where he's at half of the time. And so it's very clear to me.
Okay. Let me bring in Karoline Leavitt. Now, Karoline, you've been in the headlines this week after your appearance on CNN, where they cut you off in mid-flow. Let's take a look at the clip that ended your debate there.
Well, first of all, it would take someone 5 minutes to Google Jake Tapper, Donald Trump, to see that Jake Tapper has consistently frequently liked President Trump to Adolf Hitler.
Ma'am, I'm going to stop this interview if you continue to attack my colleagues. I would like to talk about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who you work for.
Yes.
If you are here to speak on his behalf, I am willing to have this conversation.
I am stating facts that your colleagues have stated in the past.
Okay,
now,
I'm sorry, guys. We're going to come back out to the panel. Karoline, thank you very much for your time. You are welcome to come back.
Well, you're certainly welcome to continue your thread here. What I would say is I used to work with Jake Tapper. I got a lot of respect for him. I think he'll be a very good moderator, actually. In fact, there are some other people at CNN I would have thought would have been much more in your crosshairs than him. But first of all, your reaction to them ending that interview, did you feel that it was justified? I mean, you were attacking her colleagues. I mean, I would probably, if someone did that to me here, I don't know how I'd respond, but probably wouldn't take it very well. I mean, did you know that you were rattling a cage that may lead to the interview being short-circuited?
No, absolutely not. It was shocking how triggering the truth was to CNN. And I wasn't attacking her colleagues. I was simply stating that Jake Tapper and Dana Bash have a long history of very anti-Trump statements. Jake Tapper said that President Trump's presidency was a long American national nightmare. He has compared President Trump to Hitler many times, which is egregious and disgusting if you call yourself an unbiased journalist. And that's simply all I was trying to state, that we expect that this is going to be a 3-on-1 debate with President Trump on a network that has been knowingly hostile to him for the past 8 years. But that's okay. We know what we're walking into. President Trump made a commitment to the American people that he would debate Joe Biden anytime, anywhere, any place. That's part of the reason these debates are happening. If we remember a few months ago, there was a lot of talk that Joe Biden's campaign was trying to avoid debating at all, which would have been terrible for our democracy. So for those who really believe in democracy, the Democrats claim to, they should be pleased that President Trump will be on that debate stage on Thursday. And as for the threat to democracy argument, I'd like to respond to a couple of points made previously. Joe Biden could go up there and say that all he wants. His campaign has spent more than $100 million to date running that exact same message. And what's that been the return on that investment? His decline in the polls, because it doesn't resonate with the American voter. What do Americans care about right now? They care about the fact that everything you try to buy in this country, from groceries to gasoline to rent to a mortgage, is more expensive because of Joe Biden's economic policies than it was in Donald Trump's America. Americans care about the fact that our country is currently being invaded by more than 11 million illegal people from all over this world. And we wake up to headlines every single day about heinous, violent crimes that are being committed at the hands of people who have been released into this country by Joe Biden. So I would hope that Joe Biden will actually have some answers for his policies that have made our country worse off in the past few years. Okay. And I hope that CNN will ask him those tough questions.
Is he? I mean, what are Donald Trump's tactics going to be? You know him very well. You work for him. Is he going to go savage Rottweiler or cuddly poodle and stun everybody?
Well, I certainly won't be revealing our debate strategy on this program, but I will tell you, President Trump is going to be President Trump, and he is going to continue to talk about the policies of his first term that were very successful, his economic policies that created an economic boom before the pandemic. We had record low unemployment for all Americans, his foreign policy strategy to provide peace in this world through strength, which he was the first president in the modern era not to enter the United States into any new wars. Now look at the world. We're engaged in war in Ukraine, war in the Middle East. China is taking advantage of us every day because Joe Biden is weak. And so President Trump is going to take this opportunity to contrast his strength with Joe Biden's weakness, his record of success with Joe Biden's failures.
All right, bring in Francesca. I mean, look, there's a lot of concern in the Biden camp that this could be a lethal night for President Biden, that all these signs of cognitive decline, physical and mental, might suddenly get exposed in front of most of America watching, notwithstanding the fact you're a diehard anti-Trumper. Do you have that concern that the whole election actually could come down to this debate, to 90 minutes, where if Biden really, looks like he's falling apart before our eyes, physically and mentally, that's it?
Yeah. No, I'm actually, I'm not here to defend Biden's. Look, Biden's brain is basically turning into the soft serve that he loves so much. But honestly, look at his actual cabinet and what they're doing. I mean, to Karoline's point, they're going after Ticketmaster and Adobe. They're suing Adobe and they're suing Amazon. They're suing them for what? For ripping off customers. The Department of Transportation right now is requiring airlines that if they cancel your flight, they got to pay you back in full. That's putting money in American people's pockets. Look, I have crazy critiques of Joe Biden, specifically around the assault on Gaza and continuing the border policies of Donald Trump, which include denying asylum to migrants who are seeking a better life and escaping. It's illegal under international law to do that. But he's just picking up where Trump left off. But honestly, in terms of the economy, it's not one of them. Giving massive student debt relief to millions and millions of Americans, it's just not one of them. He's pretty strong there. And like you said, Piers, he could probably just stand there. And Trump, look, here's the thing with Trump. Give him a lot of rope, guys. I'm sure this is part of Karoline's strategy.
Well, actually,
Give him
it's interesting.
So much rope, and he will hang himself with it. Let's watch.
Joe, I want to bring in you here because there's an NBC report. Biden's advisors have been meticulously studying and combing through all of Trump's recent comments in an effort to best identify what might get under his skin and trigger him. Now, I've known Trump nearly 20 years, good times and bad, very friendly times, some not so friendly. But one thing I know about Trump is he's got the thinnest skin of anyone I've ever met in my life and the thickest. So it's quite a high-risk strategy, I think, to comb through stuff and think that's where he's going to be triggered, because Trump's unpredictable. It's part of his appeal. He is unpredictable. If you were Biden, what strategy would you be deploying?
Piers, I'd go after Trump. Again, I'm a one-trick pony here. I don't want to normalize this guy. He is a threat to democracy. I would needle him. I agree with you. He's the thinnest skinned person I've ever met.
And
he
thickest.
Is a big.
And thickest.
Well, we can debate that.
He's got both. In other words, he
breathes.
reacts to absolutely everything, but he can soak up stuff that would kill anybody.
Right, but he gets oxygen by always playing the victim. He's always the victim. Look, I disagree with Ms. Leavitt. I think the American people are capable of caring about the price of bread and caring about their democracy. But I'll say this, Piers, and maybe there's common ground here. I think this is on Biden. I think Biden has something to prove Thursday night. I don't think Trump does. Everybody knows who Trump is.
Yeah.
We have to decide if we want that back in the White House. Biden has to prove he's not too old and he's up to the job, period.
Yeah.
If he can do that, I think he'll win. If he can't, he won't.
Yeah, I think that's right. Brandon, I mean, I think that if I were Trump, when I did the Celebrity Apprentice with him, which meant that night after night, for weeks, for 3 hours a night, I sat opposite a boardroom desk from him. And I saw a lot of charm from Trump, a lot of empathy, a lot of stuff that he likes to hide in his political persona. And I've tried having this conversation with him since then. So why don't you just try a little bit more of that, particularly during the pandemic and things like that. He thinks it makes him look a bit weak. He prefers to be the tough guy. I get it. But actually, with no audience tomorrow, he can't feed off the reaction of an audience. Trump being, telling a few of his jokes, being charming, being perhaps not as Trump, the politician-like as he often is, not as aggressive, could that be a smart tactic to appeal to people, maybe the independents, the moderates who think he's just a barbarian, actually, I'm not that guy. Because he's got it in him if he wants to be that guy.
Yeah, Pierce, I think that's 100% right. I think Donald Trump should give that appeal. I mean, I've met Donald Trump several times. The guy is one of the nicest people you'll ever meet. He's loving, he's kind. I mean, he lights up a room.
He can be brutal as well. That's the point. He's
right.
He can be all things sometimes in the same conversation.
Right. We know when Trump want to get busy, he can get busy. You see him in front of the world, he's elbowing people and he's putting America first. We know what he's capable of. But I think that he's already shown that side of him, and a lot of people love that side of him, and we need a leader like that. But the people who are deranged and they think that this guy's a murderous thug and that he's going to ruin America, I think if his fun side comes out and he looks, like a reasonable person and he's just having fun up there, he has everything on his side. Joe Biden sucks. I mean, there's not one person that I know that voted for Joe Biden that's going to vote for him again. The guy is stumbling everywhere he go. He don't know where he's at.
Well, there's no doubt.
We don't know if he's pooping his pants or not.
Right.
So, I mean, that guy's going to be the one of the pressure. I don't think he can stand up for that
Francesca,
long. I don't know if he can stop stuttering.
With respect,
but anyway,
I don't think you can feign.
I think if he's calm, he'll be good.
Francesca, you can't feign outrage at that comment, given you suggested earlier that Trump wants to sleep with his daughter. I mean, come on.
Well, the pooping the pants?
Well, you think that's better or worse than accusing someone of sleeping with their daughter or wanting to?
Well, Donald Trump did say that if Ivanka wasn't his daughter, he'd be dating her. But those are his words, not mine.
That's not sleeping with your daughter.
No.
You're talking about incest.
That's
and all
true.
Kind of
when
stuff.
you date
what
someone,
kind of deranged
when you
statement
date
are
someone,
you saying?
you don't
the
actually
man is going to sleep with his daughter?
Well, you know what?
TBD on that. Let's go. Yeah. No, I want to point something out. I do think it's important for Joe Biden to talk about the economy here, and specifically who's backing Donald Trump and what Donald Trump has done for those people. And those people I'm talking about are billionaires. Now, they are a minority. They are a protected class. Don't want to engage in any anti-billionaire rhetoric. But the billionaires are lining up behind Donald Trump. Why? Because his tax cuts that he passed when he became president in 2017, they lapse in the year 2025. So these rich folks want a tax write-off. And one of those things they got to write off was a $60 million private jet. That's right, everybody. Billionaires got to write off their private jets. Now, don't come at me. Maybe you're very close to owning a PJ yourself. Congratulations. We're talking about Larry Ellison of Oracle, who's lining up behind Trump, even though he had criticisms of him after January 6th. We're talking about Miriam Adelson, the wife of late Sheldon Adelson, who's also lining up behind Trump as well. All the billionaires are there because they know what is good for them, and that is to elect a guy who's a Trojan horse for tax breaks and a funnel from money from the working class
hang on.
to the wealthy.
Let me bring in. I want to bring in Karoline, who's been waiting patiently. I mean, look, the economy is obviously going to be a big part of it. In a new YouGov poll, it asked registered voters what topics they want the candidates to be asked about. 60%, number one, the economy, 54% border security, immigration, 38% democracy, 34% abortion, 26% racism, culture wars. Economy there, comfortably the number one issue. The interesting thing is that most people seem to think the American economy, comparative to the rest of the world, isn't doing too badly. But Biden appears to be incapable of selling that message, and his own approval rating is now at record lows. And in fact, no one's ever had a 37% approval rating and got elected or re-elected. So there is a disconnect between perhaps the reality of the economy, and it may be what you said earlier, that many people just find that, with inflation and the cost of living crisis, that their general bills are still very high. So even though the overall economy isn't in bad shape in America, the individual burden that people are feeling is cutting through into what they want to see debated tomorrow on Thursday.
Well, that's because of Joe Biden's tax and spend policies, inflation is outpacing real wages in this country. So people are working hard, working two jobs, but what they're making is not keeping up with the cost of living. And it's because Joe Biden pumped unnecessarily billions of dollars into our economy when all he had to do was open it up post-pandemic when he got into the White House. And not only that, but Francesca was just saying that President Trump's not supported by the working class. That is an outright lie. And I have a few huge statistics to prove it. First of all, when you look at these polls on the economy, the American public trusts Donald Trump on the issue of the economy over Joe Biden by a significant margin. In literally every single poll, Donald Trump's economy and his tax cuts put more money back into the pocketbooks of hardworking Americans. Just last week, he actually had an announcement in the state of Nevada that he's going to stop taxes on tips for tipped workers. We know that the majority of tipped workers in this country are actually women, many of which are single mothers that are working hard as waitresses and bartenders and service workers to feed their families. That's a huge, huge policy promise that President Trump has made. He will deliver on that in his second term. What's Joe Biden promising to do in a second term if he's given one? Tax the American people more. He has actually pledged to sign the largest tax increase in American history, and it will rob the average working family
on corporations, Caroline. Like, let's remember, inflation is not inflation. It's greedflation. Greedflation is when corporations...
Inflation is the greatest tax on the American worker. It's the greatest tax of the American worker.
Yes, because it is created by corporations that basically charge the American people whatever they want to charge. Did you try and get Taylor Swift concert tickets, Caroline? Tell me you did. And if you were lucky enough, amazing.
No,
Joe Biden's
because they're
doing
too
those kinds of things.
expensive and no one can afford them.
Exactly.
And people can't afford
and
the
who's
flights
actually
you're
trying to
talking
rein
about.
in corporate greedflation? It's Joe Biden. I don't like this guy. But you got to give him a win. Even Piers is giving him a win, man. And it's on the economy specifically. You know who pays for the tax breaks for the wealthy? Americans, everyday Americans.
You can't misconstrue what I said. I said the overall economy, comparative to many other countries, is actually not in bad shape. I mean, Joe, I want to bring you in here. There's another part of this which I find fascinating, which is the enormous, indisputable swing in the black support for Trump and the Latino support for Trump. And it's really marked since 2020. Swing away from Biden to Trump, the guy that many anti-Biden, anti-Trumpers say is the worst racist the world's ever seen. And yet here you have black and Latino Americans queuing up to support him. What is going on there, do you think?
Well, there's some truth there, Piers, but we don't know, officially what those numbers are going to be. Everybody thought there'd be a huge swing in 2020 among black and Latino support for Trump, and it wasn't there. There could be this year. I think a lot of it goes to the fact that the Democratic Party, weirdly, there's been a swing of college-educated people to the Democrats and working-class people to the Republicans. I acknowledge that. Right. White, black, and brown, by the way. But Piers, here's the setting. Here's the truth that all four of us privately have to admit. There's a reason this race is a dead heat. These are two unlikable candidates, period, right? That's just a fact. That's why this thing's a dead heat. But I also, Piers, think there are a lot of Americans who are undecided. They look at Trump and they say, that guy's a horrible guy. He's an asshole. And then they look at Biden and they say, he's too old. That's why I think it'll be a lot easier for Biden Thursday night to show he's not too old, because I don't think Trump's capable of ever showing he's not an asshole, because that's who he is.
See, that's interesting, because that's the point I was making, because I've seen him show a very different side. And I've seen a lot of that other side to him. I remember when I came back to the UK from America when I left CNN, I could count on one hand a number of high-profile Americans who bothered to contact me again. It was like, oh God, we got rid of the brick, great. Donald Trump rang me like every 3-4 weeks just to check how I was doing. He sent me notes, he sent me letters, I just remember little things like that about him. He has got that in his locker. And the question is, will he show a little bit more of that? I hope he does, for his sake, because I think that whoever wins this, you want to feel good about the President of the United States. But I agree with you, the question I would ask Francesca is this: if it's a disaster, given how early this debate is being held, way earlier than normal, do you think there is a kind of subplot here where the Democrats are like, okay, let's see how he does in this debate. If it is a disaster and Trump chews him up, which could easily happen, then we've got time to potentially get him out and parachute somebody younger and more dynamic in, a Gavin Newsom or whoever it may be. Do you think that is a possibility?
I wish, Piers, the Democratic Party was more strategic, thoughtful, and actually responded to its voting base that does not want another Biden administration. The administration is good. Biden himself not good at even selling the wins that they have had. As you explained, the American Rescue Plan, the Inflation Reduction Act, on and on and on and on. So look, I'm waiting. I'll be at the DNC with my fingers crossed like, oh, please, oh, please, oh, please. Anyone would be better. And I think on top of that, and Joe and I might disagree on this, I also think that his Gaza policy and the inability to create a ceasefire and create peace in that region is crushing him, especially with young voters who do not want to see more dead babies on our social media feeds.
Well, it's interesting.
So I think that is primary.
Interesting you say that. 36% of the YouGov survey want Israel-Gaza discussed. 32% want Putin-Ukraine discussed. 29% China. I mean, Brandon, foreign policy, Trump's America first, but many people do give him credit in his first term for having a very unusual but possibly effective relationship with all these world leaders where he didn't go to war anywhere, and actually they all seem to pretty much behave themselves, in contrast to what's been going on under Biden. I mean, it might be complete coincidence. It might be because Trump's unpredictability makes him somebody that other world leaders look at with slight trepidation. But how big, if you were Trump, would you be going on Thursday night about things like Israel, Gaza, like Ukraine and Russia?
Yeah, I think it's big for him to touch on those things. That's added ammunition to his firearm here. I mean, there was no wars under Donald Trump. Why? Because he's a real man. And he's a real person. These cowards out here saying, I would never meet with Putin and talk to anybody. What are you saying? You need to meet with these people. You need to show that America is strong and America is going to deal with you if you step out of line. That's why nobody did anything when Trump was in office. That's why Soleimani is chopped beef right now, rotting somewhere, because when you step out of line, Trump is going to react to you and he's going to set the world stage and know that America is the top country and nobody's messing with us. It's very simple, and I think he can push that. The American people are fearful of war. We don't need to be involved in the Ukraine war. We don't need to be involved in Gaza. To be quite honest, unless Israel was losing, we don't need to be involved in that. We need to focus on America. People in America are struggling. We're sending billions of dollars to wars that are never going to end. America was sick of that under Barack Obama, sick of that under George Bush, and that's why they love Donald Trump. And it's clear that if he brings that up, the American people can see very clearly that we're not going to be in endless wars with Trump. I think that's one of his election points.
Okay, I want to get some quick fire predictions before we let you all go. I'll start with you, Karoline. The 2020 viewing figures for the last debate, which incredibly was the last time either of them took part in any debate, which is an amazing statistic, but they got to 73 million. Given all the hype behind this, are you expecting that number to be bigger this time?
I do expect that there's going to be more ratings this time. There has been a lot of hype. Although it is summer, people are enjoying themselves. That could have a damper on the ratings, but I think overall, this is going to be a great opportunity. People want to see these two candidates go head to head. We look forward to it on Team Trump. And I just want to offer an invitation to Francesca. If you want peace in the Middle East, girl, then you should vote for Donald Trump. We had peace in the Middle East 4 years ago. There was a ceasefire. It ended on October 7th, and that's because Joe Biden is a terrible commander-in-chief. President Trump secured peace in the Middle East and around this world. So if you want that, you can vote for us.
Well, I have a request for you as well, actually, which is that last time I spoke to President Trump was a few months ago, and he promised me another interview. So anytime you can schedule me in, you know where to find me.
All right, Piers. We know you're on the list. We'll get it done. Thank you.
Let me ask you, Joe, will Biden outperform or underperform expectations?
Piers, I think this will be the most watched presidential debate. I think both candidates will outperform, which I think will be a net plus for Biden. And I agree with the previous guest. Make Ukraine an issue. If Trump's elected, we will cut off all aid to Ukraine. Trump will support Putin. If Biden's reelected, we will continue to support Ukraine. That's a great issue.
Okay. Francesca, let me ask you, do you think Trump will stay on message and be disciplined or go full savage Trump Rottweiler?
I like how you pronounce Rottweiler. It's very German.
It's the correct pronunciation.
No, he can't have his teleprompter, and he's all about like others use teleprompter. He's been using the teleprompter a lot. This is the first time that Trump has actually been in a debate setting. Remember, he didn't agree to go on the Republican debates, and I think he should have, because it would have been some good practice for him. I don't know, man. I'm just hoping to hear the shark electrocution story again. So no, he's not going to be restrained at all.
All right, I'm going to ask you all for a one-word answer here, starting with you, Brandon. Who's going to win?
Trump.
Karoline, I kind of think I know where you're going to go.
Yes, you do. Of course, President
The other
Trump.
two, I'm not so convinced. I mean, Joe, who do you think is going to win, Biden or Trump on the night?
I think it's going to be an utter draw.
Okay, and Francesca?
I think CNN's going to win. I mean, they get all the copyright wins, and they have exclusive rights to air this debate. So
Come on,
CNN,
off the
baby.
fence, Trump or Biden on the night?
I think Biden's gonna get that B12 shot. I think Biden's gonna be like peppy. He might even jog.
You think you'll win?
Sure, yeah.
Wow. I don't think you are sure, are you, Francesca? You just feel like you have to because no one else has said Biden.
I literally told you I'm not looking forward to this debate. I don't think a lot of people are gonna watch it, but I do think
Oh my God,
Trump's
everyone's gonna watch it.
Just admit Biden's gonna lose. Just admit Biden's gonna lose. Just admit it. It's okay.
I'll admit
you.
whatever y'all want me to admit. All right? Whatever.
Don't be
just
so
keep it
weak,
real.
Whatever you need
Francesca.
You know he's not gonna win. You can't even give a clear answer. You know he's not gonna win.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to, just to please you all, we're going to get you all back on Friday to see how accurate you all were. For the record, I think Trump will win this debate. I do not think Joe Biden can survive 90 minutes exposed in a live debate scenario without doing...
Hey, Piers, can I change my vote?
Yeah.
I do think Biden will win because I think Team Trump has screwed up the expectations game.
Well, that is interesting because I bought into those expectations. I sadly think that Biden is going to really struggle with this format. We shall see. It's going to be riveting. I will be watching. Thank you to my panel and hopefully see most of you on Friday. Thank you very much.